Your mic needs to be on.
Isn't that a light on? Oh, it was, it looked like it was on, but it wasn't on. Okay. You shouldn't, that's what you get when you get a beginner. So is there a motion to approve the minutes that we received in the mail? Are there any corrections, changes?
I think we need to take a roll call to start our meeting.
Okay, that's right. Roll call first.
Members of the committee, Councilor Paula Schnapp,
Present.
Councilor Betty Lutke,
Here.
Councilor Charlie Bloom,
Here.
Councilor John Crow,
Here.
Councilor Gordon Starr, Mary Ann Barboza, Hilda Hay, Laura Schufelt, and Chair of the committee, Rick Presby.
Here.
You have quorum.
Laura, I know, has the flu, so she called me and said she wasn't coming. I didn't hear from Gordon, so,
Gordon had a conflict with the strategic planning meeting for the airport, so
okay, it's good to know. So I will start over with the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of our July 18th meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
No comments or corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. One person is coming to this meeting, Jake Dewey. But, what I want to do is change the agenda a little bit and have Jake make a presentation to us. You ready, Jake?
I mean, I'm not really sure what I'm presenting, but sure.
And the reason that I asked Jake, I don't know if anybody remembers at the last meeting to come, because Jake expressed some experience in taking existing buildings and converting them to housing. And obviously, that's something that is big in the Cape's future, but one of the disadvantages in that, for builders anyway, is that it costs extra to do it. And so I just thought we could start out talking to Jake while he's here, who does some of this, and he could tell us a little bit about that, as well as the province, something that's being done in Provincetown that we have on our list, our town plan list, but that has not been approved yet, and it may not be the same thing. So, Jake?
Yeah, Jake Dewey, resident of Hyannis. I mean, I don't have anything formally. Rick and I talked on the phone a little bit about it, but you know, looking at converting like an office building to a residential, people think, oh, that should be so easy. We should just be able to do that. Makes so much sense. Office isn't in high demand now. But the cost, the code upgrade cost of this is, it almost makes more sense to just bulldoze the building and start over. You know, the structural engineering stuff, I mean, even going back to the motel project that everyone asks me about all the time, the structural components of that, we basically would be doing a historic preservation of a old motel, because we would have to lift it up, put structural beams underneath it, set it back down to bring things up to code. The fire code is very significant. The beams have to be treated with spray foam and different things like that. So you're opening up walls. Even if you've got I have one office building that would be a great conversion. It's already laid out perfectly for 12 studios. But the time, just the engineering cost to get into it is significant before you even get into the actual construction cost. You're going to spend so much time trying to figure out, you know, what we have to do to make it a safe place to live. Life safety stuff always trumps all rules. You know, you can do a 40B, but you're still going to have all your life safety items. There's really no way around that. And I don't think we as a town can come up with a solution for that. But when people get frustrated, you know, why are we not converting these spaces into it? That's a big reason why. It's just a cost, economics piece.
Well, it seems to me that, quick comment, and maybe you can answer this, it's that we have a fair number, we have relatively little land left on Cape Cod. We have some, but we don't want to squeeze all that land out of existence. It's 14% now or something like that. And, you know, during my lifetime, it's gone from probably 40% to 14% with a lot of development, you know, with the Cape Cod Commission being created and so forth. So it seems to me that the town ought to take a pretty hard look at some of those properties. In fact, there was an article in the paper about the Columns house in Dennis, and what's going on. Now, that's sat there for years, I don't know how long, 40 years or so.
Multiple people made a run at it too. There was multiple attempts of
Yeah,
doing different
'cause it
things
never worked
that failed.
financially.
Yeah, it just didn't work.
And I don't know how it's working for the person who's doing it now, but apparently it is. So my thought is that when you develop new housing, it costs a lot of money. I mean, it's ridiculous amounts of money, you know, for people who aren't in the business. It seems like it's ridiculous. So that, is it worth the town looking at ways, using state money, federal money, local money, to make it more possible for a developer to reuse an existing building and therefore not really negatively affect the environment and to create housing? Is that worth it? Is that something we should look at?
And I think it's that what the town wants? Is that how we envision our landscape looking? And how we want the housing, or do we want more scattered, small scale?
Well, one of the issues, though, that you might be aware of, but I may be more aware of than you are, is the resistance to new developments in critical pieces of land. I live in Marston's Mills. We have 14 acres there where the school was torn down. I've been to 3 or 4 meetings of town members in Marston's Mills, and there's a surprising amount of objection to building any housing there. And that, you know, and I understand that to some extent, to a great extent. I mean, people live their lives. They don't want things to change. They don't want stuff in their backyard.
Point of order, please. Generally, during public comment, the comments are made, and the chair solicits questions or response, either from the rest of the public. So I just want to make sure if this
I'm
is...
going to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, though. So it seems to me that we can't forget about converting existing buildings, because people won't object to that in most cases. And it may be more doable in some ways than creating new stuff in some instances. That's just my comment.
Yeah, I mean, you never know what the response of the public's going to be, right?
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, so any final words from you?
I mean, I guess just to that sort of point of, you know, it's what does the community want? Do we want, you know, should we be looking at quarter-acre lots that are undeveloped, that there aren't very many of out there, but there are some that, you know, a long while back, you could build a single-family home on it. Do we want to allow a 1 or 2 unit home on some of those lots again?
Yeah.
You know, there might be a vacant lot in a row of 20 lots, the only one that hasn't been built on, just sitting there, can't be built on. You'd have to make it comply with septic, or if sewer happened to be coming there. But will the town tolerate that level of sort of infill development growth? You know, very small scale stuff. But I think, you know, looking at that as a way to maybe not make it just straight by right, but make a process to say, okay, this one fits, come through a public process, come to the housing committee, come to the planning board, and everyone can say, yes, we like this. This is a small 2 or 3 bedroom house, fits with the scale of the neighborhood. You know, how do we make a process to do that, to fill in these little lots here and there? So that's one of my comments I think we need to look at.
Okay. Any questions from?
Is it on now? Can you hear me? Okay, and no disrespect to
Can you hear?
Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. No disrespect to what you're saying as far as what the town wants, but right now, as far as the emergency housing, I don't think anybody cares. Because when the town was building and zoning for all these businesses, they didn't care about what everybody wanted. They took what used to be for homes and turned it into business zoning. So that's number one, not an issue. To me, it is cheaper to take some of the buildings that are up. You still have to get the workers, pay the workers, do the overtime, do all that kind of stuff. So to take an existing building and redo it, it's like the nursing home that sat there forever. It never made sense to me why that sat. If the town, not the people, but if the town cared, they could have turned that over into apartments. So I really think we need to look at how we can take a lot of these existing buildings, and there's federal funding, there's all kind of things that we could do. But we have to claim, and I have my own personal fight with the zonings, that's another issue, but we have to claim some of this land back. You know, so I think we need to really talk about that and look at that, you know?
Good. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Oh,
Thanks,
sorry.
Rick. Jake, you said something about, you're talking about these buildings that are existing commercial buildings and the difficulty in changing them according to the health and safety rules. What is your, what suggestions do you have to make that easier that the town can implement to reach that point?
I think to Rick's point, if that's really something we want, we need to create an incentive to do it, to just offset a little bit of those costs. If that's, make it a public process where it's like, okay, this really is a prime spot that could be redone into something and create incentives to do it. I think that's the only way it's going to work, because it doesn't pencil out right now. The office space isn't necessarily super profitable right now, but the cost to convert it is just crazy.
So on your other subject, the Provincetown plan that was sent out to everyone here, is there anything you want to say about that?
I
Have
think
you used
it's.
it? Have you ever used it?
I have property in Utah that we have it, and that's the only other place I have. I've got multifamilies there, and it's again same sort of resort community subsidizing year-round rental. Your year-round residents that are living and working and paying taxes in your community. It's helping subsidize to keep those units. I guess just the biggest thing is some of the conversations I've had with people over the past 5 years about that, or probably more than that now. It doesn't actually increase taxes or change the tax levy. It's just shifting it. It's not costing the town any money. It's just shifting who is paying the tax burden, and it's putting it on our second homeowners and our higher level residential property homeowners that are above the exemption. So I just think it's a very easy lift of a way to create some support, because it doesn't work to have a single family rental anymore with a tax bill of $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch in Centerville. It's just doesn't work. If you have that tax adjustment, it helps. It's still not a home run, but it does help make it a little bit more tolerable.
Closes the gap.
Yeah.
May I ask one more
Do you have a comment?
Yes, maybe one tiny question. And I notice, no disrespect to you, because you're a businessman, you're a builder, that's what you do. But everything is about what it's going to cost everybody. But we're a committee to help people find housing. And I think as far as getting people off the street, getting people secure, to redo the buildings that are there is going to take less time than it is to knock it down and rebuild. Now, that may not be a profitable idea for the business people in the town, but that's not our concern right now. I think if you ask most of the residents, their concern is finding secure shelter. So whatever tax bracket it does for the business people, or it does for the next builder that wants to come into Cape Cod, I could care less. And I will be on the other side fighting that. So, like I said, no disrespect to you, because
But I think that's the balance of how do we keep the price point affordable. I really focus on trying to hit an affordable market rate housing price point. And with a conversion of a existing office building, it's a lot harder to do that than it is with a stick-built. We've just built these apartments. We're 3 months in. I think we'll hopefully be done in another 2 months.
But I think everybody can agree that whenever you're doing things for a community, there's different monies set aside for different issues. And federal money is available for helping the everyday community people. So it's not like the town is not going to get help, federal help to do certain things. Individuals who may be trying to be first home or apartment owners will get individual help. There are different things to lower our cost. But what I'm trying to do, and this is not the best thing everybody wants to hear, but I'm purposely eliminating what a businessman wants or what a builder wants, because that's the problem with Cape Cod. It's been so welcoming to businesses and builders that it's pushed the community people aside. So there's federal money there to do what we have to do if we're really going to be honest about it. And I'm willing to look into it and fight and work beside you and help find that money if I have to. Maybe something different, but I'll do it. Thank you.
So Charlie?
Yeah, hi, Jake. In following up with what Mary Ann just said, the thing I like about this expanded Provincetown residential exemption is that it is specifically renting to Provincetown residents, as opposed to, say, TD Bank, which, you know, is put up to a lottery, and who knows who's going to be living there. I mean, we really do have a population that needs a place to live, and I'd like to see more in that kind of restriction, you know, restricted to Barnstable residents. But you said it helps a little bit. Were you referring to the residential exemption in Provincetown? So it's not that great.
I mean, it helps. It's not, you know, the margins are very slim on renting to market rate year-round, a level of rent that people can afford to actually comfortably live in our community. And that helps a little bit. It doesn't, you know, I think some people think, oh, that's, you know, this sort of like giveaway that makes all the landlords so much money or something. It's not that big, but it helps. It would hopefully draw some people away from short-term renting their property, you know, and consider being year-round because they get a little bit of an incentive to be providing that type of housing. But it's not a home run that we're going to get 1,000 new rental units in the next year from it.
Okay.
But
I hear you.
Okay.
We need more than just this.
it's another tool to put sort of in the toolbox is how I see it.
Yeah.
And I think we could put, you know, I think there could be some restrictions on it that the tenants have to work a certain number of hours within the community if we wanted to have that. That I've seen programs that have that laid out where, you know, a pay stub has to be submitted that they're working here.
No,
Okay,
thank
Hilda?
you.
Yeah. Listening to Jake and what he's saying, if it is costing more to refurbish these buildings, if we have empty lands that the town has, wouldn't it be profitable then if we do some prefab houses that would take less time and it would be at least half the price?
I don't have experience with prefab housing, but I was on a call with the Cape Cod Commission last week, and there's I think he's part of the Davenport companies that's done development, and they have found that it's more costly to do prefab housing. The actual construction cost might be a little bit less, but then it catches up to you on the transport costs. Getting the boxes over the bridge is very challenging, and so they have said that it does not actually come out ahead. But it's definitely, I mean, I would love it if we could have Lego sets that showed up and we could be building, you know, units
But
in 3 months' time, just plopping them in place.
But I know Nantucket has moved towards that area in doing prefab housing because the regular people can't afford a house in Nantucket, and they have been doing their prefab housing, which is cheaper for them. In a sense, I don't know how they get it there by boat. I would
I think
imagine
they're going by barge from New Bedford.
by
but yeah.
bar. So that could be an idea also. If they can get it to Nantucket, they could get it to Barnstable.
I think that's
And-
what the commission is looking at, trying to create this sort of toolbox of housing recipes or house recipes that are sort of, I think some would be prefab what they're proposing.
And I think what needs to happen in the town of Barnstable, that these houses that are being built and for affordable housing or low income, whichever way we want to term it, it should only be given to Barnstable residents. You got to show that you have been living here for 2 years at least, working here, so that, because I think what's happening every time houses are built, it's open to anybody who wants to come, and then the people that are here are still being left behind. So there got to be some form of restrictions. If you're not living here for a certain period of time, you can't get a house just like that, and you have to be working here and show that you're working here. and let's support the businesses that are here and the people that are already here. That's what I think should happen.
Okay, we got to move on here. We don't have that much time, but go ahead if you make it quick.
Okay, real quick, thank you.
One question I have is that I read through this, and a lot of it is you have to meet the certain income requirements and a number of other things. And I understand that the town of Barnstable has had trouble accounting for this over the years. And how do you, like, say 5 years hence, how does the town know that the same criteria and meeting these standards? How would they find that out? Whether those rents are people renting still are on the income level, underneath the income level, and how would you
I'm not sure
address
how
that?
exactly Provincetown is doing it because I submit the paperwork in Utah. I know that there we're submitting copies of driver's licenses of the tenants to show that they're filing that as their permanent residence, and sometimes you're getting a copy of their first page of their tax return with stuff blacked out. But I think it would be up to our assessor and our housing coordinator of how they wanted to administer it here. But I assume that council or someone would make a policy of, say, here's what has to be submitted on the first of the year or whenever residential exemptions are due.
Every year while those are still in place.
I would think it would have to be every year.
Can I ask you to hold that question for another night? Because, in fact, what I had thought about on that same issue is inviting the key person here in town to come to our meeting and explain to us exactly what they're doing to monitor the long history of affordable housing and managing that, because that's a critical piece. If we're losing the stuff we already did, then that's the same thing as not creating new housing. And so it's a very important issue. It doesn't seem like it's our responsibility, but I'm not so sure if we're going to come up with 3 things in the next 8 months that are going to make housing work here. We can't pick things that are never going to happen. We have to pick things that actually will happen. And that's the trick to this, because if you look at the town plan, I don't know, the 130-page town plan, which I painstakingly read and took notes on, they've thought of just about everything in that plan. And so we need to look at it and see what actually can possibly work and be done, and not things that are just good ideas. I'm going to do public comment right after we get done with this initial discussion.
Okay. I just wanted to ask Jake something while he's here, because you'd mentioned your motel. And I look around town, and I know apartments were successfully built on top of the Bell Tower Mall. People are living in those. On North Street, it looks like an office building is being converted right now. There's another one on West Main, I think across from Stop and Shop. I know Stewie Bornstein is working on one behind Staples. Can you explain to us, because you talk about things that are never going to happen, your motel, when do you think, what is the obstacle that is stopping you from, you've had that motel how many years? 4, something like
that, yeah.
Yeah, what is stopping that from moving forward?
So that is a very long, skinny lot. HB zoning goes 300 feet back from the center line of West Main Street. So multifamily housing is allowed 300 feet back. Everything behind there is single family. Beyond that, the undeveloped land there falls under the Cape Cod Commission's open space guideline. And so it has to go to the commission. So it sort of has put there's not really a path, an easy path forward of what to do on a very long, skinny lot that you can only, you lose the buffer from the front of West Main. So you only really have, 150 feet to actually build multifamily housing in.
Of course, both those problems are solved if you do a 40B. You don't have to go to the commission, and you don't have to worry about the zoning.
But I think that, yes, it could go 40B. I think something better could happen there, but, in the meantime, it sort of stayed what it is. It's the same thing on the Pitcher's Way project. We're not allowed to go for use variances for our commercial corridors. You can't get a use variance on West Main or 28 or 132. That's just a zoning bylaw that we have. And whether it makes sense or not, I don't know.
Okay. Well, okay, one more question.
the Provincetown deals with, basically, I think the fundamental is that you're trying to incentivize people to rent their properties year-round versus short-term rent. Okay, and I think the question comes down to is whether the incentives are large enough, because short-term rentals earn a lot of money in a very short period of time. And I'm not sure that's going to be an incentive for people to not do that. And I think this will probably come down to us when we start working on short-term rentals and regulations and that stuff. I think this should be all come together so we can talk to us at the same time. Because I think this committee is going to have to talk about both at the same time. And if you have regulations that cut down on the availability of short-term rentals in some ways, that will meet some of these problems that we, instead of having to pay owners not to rent. You see what I mean? And so I think that all ties this both together on these two issues. So I think we need to look at that in the future.
Last comment.
All right, last comment.
That's it.
But that's exactly the point that I had wanted to say. While I appreciate everyone trying to get together, this committee, the committee in the other room, the committee downstairs, wherever your committees are, nothing is going to get done until everybody is in the one room. Because seriously, because I heard your comment when you said our community, and if something is feasible for the landlords to rent, that's what they're looking at. Well, to be honest, before maybe the previous town people gave the community to the business people, the community was our community. And now everything is working around you guys, and we have to, everyone is looking in terms of how is it working for us before we rent to them. So we have to get everybody in one room so we can find out how this is done, because if it's only going to be that way, then we all have to take a loss. You guys are going to have to make some rent cuts on your little properties. Maybe we have to pay a little more, not in the thousands, but there's got to be some coming together. But we're not going to do it. We're not going to be able to make any plans here as a committee when we have to run back and talk to Timbuktu to get his permission. And it seems to be the businessmen in the community that everybody is concerned about. Unfortunately, I don't fall on that wagon. So nothing personal, but thank you. No more said.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming, Jake.
Thank you. Thank you, Rick. Thank you for the committee.
Appreciate you doing. I
Appreciate
tried
the
to
work
get
you
you
guys are doing.
up first so you could do whatever.
Yeah.
And open for public comment. Any public comment?
How you doing today? Eric Schwab, West Hyannis. I always like to hear Jake speak. I always learn something from him. I was at the LCPC meeting the other day, and it was a travesty. And I just wanted to make you aware of some of the issues that were raised there. I saw that you're considering...
I'm having a little trouble hearing. Is there a reason for that? Is it my hearing, or is it?
I'll talk a little louder. How's that?
Okay,
Is
thanks.
that better? I don't like to talk too loud. Gets me in trouble. I saw that you had that you were going to review several documents. That's why I'm here. The Cape Cod Commission Regional Housing Strategy, the Housing Bill from the state, and the Housing Production Plan. So I just wanted to comment on some of the weaknesses of these documents and how you as a committee can improve upon them and address some of the concerns that keep coming up in Hyannis and never acted on. First of all, the Cape Cod Commission Regional Housing Strategy, the town council responded to that. They sent, Felicia Penn sent a very polite thank you, but no thank you letter back to the Cape Cod Commission. And so I would hope that as you consider that document, you keep in mind that our elected officials passed on it. It's, too broad, and it requires us as a community to give up our zoning, and I don't think we want to do that. I think whatever solution you guys come up with, whatever policies you guys adopt, I think they should be controlled locally, and the Cape Cod Commission is not asking for that. They're asking for the authority to come to Barnstable and start building housing that we may or may not want. And you'll have, as it is with 40B, you have very limited opportunity to influence these projects. And having the Cape Cod Commission come in and making a mess of things is not going to help solve our housing problem. The housing production plan, which we've all been waiting for years, is out, and I'm glad that it's now in the hands of Mr. Kupfer, who I have a lot of respect for. But I do want to comment on that 130-page document. It's a grab bag of strategies. There's no focus to it. And most importantly, there are no goals. There's no math. There's no effort to understand how much housing we actually need now and every year for the next 10 years. You know, so say we have a deficit of 2,500 units today, and we want to grow at 500 units a year. Can we as a community agree on that? I think that's the first step for any housing strategy, is like, what are we trying to accomplish? I think if you do the math first, that the strategies and the financing will come together pretty quickly. And I think a really good place to start would be Jake's property on West Main Street. I am not a fan of, four-story housing. Everyone knows that. But Jake has some very sensible ideas about how to build on West Main Street. And it's right across the street from High West. And my understanding of the new regulations that came from the state is that we can now, for the first time, build with the idea in mind that we're going to make that property available to teachers or policemen or firemen or local residents, that we can now, for the first time, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, but I understand that the new housing bill allows us to actually say, we're building this for teachers. Teachers are going to live here, and they're going to walk across the street to High West, and then go back to the grocery store, and then walk across the street to their houses. That would be a meaningful development for West Hyannis, to have the school, the grocery store, and teacher housing integrated, right? That would make sense. And it's unfortunate that Marston's Mills doesn't think about their 14 acres the same way. But, that would be another test case. Instead of proposing single-family housing with ADUs, why not encourage the town to propose more of a mix? Again, we don't know how much housing we need, so there's no urgency to these designs. Do they need 200 units in Marston's Mills? I don't know. Do you know? I mean, no one really knows. So I would encourage the housing production plan to be more specific, have more math, and hopefully someday be certified. And finally, I was just hoping to learn more today about your understanding of the state housing bill, just some of the details of it. How does it work for us? How does it help us? I'd be interested in knowing that. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Can I let me make one quick response. I pretty much agreed with everything you said, except that if you look at my own experience in reading those 130 pages and taking notes, is that's just a grab bag of every conceivable idea.
I agree.
So from those ideas, and I'm sorry this is taking so long. I wish it hadn't, because we really don't have the time. But you've got to pick out of those, I haven't counted the things in there, but let's say the 100 ideas that are in there, if you pick out 10 of them and then do the math, but it shouldn't have taken this long. That's the problem. In other words, if you put that out and then 6 months later you pick out 10 somehow or other, and then you do math on those, I think that's the way. But I think I completely agree on the math, because some of the stuff in there is easily done and some of it is impossible.
Each of those strategies should have a yield associated with it. So just if there are 100 strategies, then just ask planning and say, okay, this is a strategy. If we implement it today, how many houses will it produce in a year? How many units in a year in 5 years? So there should be a number associated with each of those strategies. I mean, Provincetown has done more than just a tax credit for long-term renters. They have actually partnered with a company that tries to buy short-term rentals back. You know, they actually go to the owners of these short-term rentals and say, hey, you know, market's soft, maybe you want to let go of your house. We'll give you X amount of dollars if you commit to making this a long-term rental. And they have a company that manages all the paperwork. You know, so we could, for example, say, target the idea of eliminating short-term rentals or phasing out short-term rentals or capping short-term rentals by village, whatever you decide you want to do. But each of those ideas should have a potential yield and a potential cost. So we can get 50 units with this strategy, and it will cost us $2 million from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and we want to start tomorrow. You know, if you put together a list of those 5, 10, you know, strategies with yields and costs, then you'll accomplish what's never been accomplished in the 20 years I've lived here, which is an actual workable plan, which I sincerely hope that all you are working towards, because it would be great. It'd be really great to really, you know, address this problem, or at least get a handle on it and get moving on it. Thank you again, Rick. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
I think I said it at the last meeting, but I just think looking at updating the inclusionary ordinance is super important, and doing it really soon. We've got so many units in the pipeline right now. We're missing the opportunity, especially on like the large projects. You know, some of our communities across the Cape are as high as 25% inclusionary, and our inclusionary ordinance is totally out of date. And Judy Bennett did that look at it. So there was a sort of study done that Jim has. But I just think we could look, again, to Mr. Schwab's point, like it gives a very clear yield of what we would be getting for affordable units right now. And I think it could be augmented to, you know, help some of the smaller projects by not burdening them with some of the paperwork and stuff that's really hard to absorb. And the larger projects we should be getting more out of, because all of these large, big developers have all the in-house counsel and people to do all of it. For us, when we're doing 10 units or 12 units right now, it is a heavy lift to deal with chasing all of these little parts and pieces for 1 or 2 units of affordable housing. But a Hanover development, you know, they have someone that literally that's their job, and they get it done really fast and really efficiently. So I just, with the thousands of units that are potentially permitted now, I hope we're getting closer to hitting our affordable targets. But at 10%, we're not. So something to look at.
Any other public comment?
Can I say something?
Yeah.
There's nothing. So I'm listening to Jake, and we're listening to each other, and we read through all these 130 pages, and I've taken so many notes reading through. And I think one of the biggest things that came to mind as Jake was speaking is we need to go, as we need to choose whichever ones we are going to work on, and what we also need to do, figure out what are the hindrances and how we're going to eliminate those hindrances to make the process faster and more efficient. I think that's the number one priority that we need to do. Because once we figure out what is the hindrances and we remove these or do what we need to do, whether we're going to adjust them, minus, take away, multiply, whatever we need to do, then we'll be able to move in a speedy direction, I would say.
One of the things that I've been thinking about well, first of all, I should apologize for the cancellation of the last meeting because I had COVID, and so nothing I could do about that. But so I had a lot of extra time to think about this and to worry about it. And I've done a lot of housing in my career, but I'm not using my preferences in the past to affect what we do here at all. But one of the things I thought of was, out of the, pick a number, 100 things in the town's plan, we have to pick about 3. I'm thinking about 3 that actually we think are workable. That's number one. Number two, I don't think we can pick out anything that the public will object to, because that's a battle that we can't fight, and because generally if 20% of the public doesn't like something, it doesn't usually happen in a democracy, and that's one of the disadvantages of a democracy. So that this group has to really spend a lot of time, and I don't think, 1 hour meetings every month and a half aren't going to do it.
No.
And we need to pick out ones that we agree are necessary and can be done. And if we can make progress in getting something done and some housing created or put into existence, then we are accomplishing more than has been accomplished an awful lot in the past, in the last 60 years when we've known about this problem. And so that's something I wanted to talk about today, and that's what was first thing on our actual agenda here. You'd never know it, but any comments about that? Yeah, Paula.
So the origin of this ad hoc committee was back in January,
Yeah.
December, actually. And so it's unfortunate that we're here at almost September and just beginning this conversation. But the idea was, in what you're saying, to have a sense of urgency and to select strategies that have already been vetted through a lot of public processes, including our housing production plan. Whether you agree with the strategies promoted by the Cape Cod Commission plan, that was also a public process. And it has strategies that may or may not be workable for Barnstable, but there are some to choose from. And then the third was the Affordable Housing Act, which did get passed by the governor and provided a seasonal community designation that may or may not apply to the town of Barnstable. So some of the things that are available under that might not be available to our town. I don't know that for sure. That I think there needs to be a little bit more investigation. But one of the things that was not anticipated was that the housing production plan would get stalled in its approval process by sitting here at the ad hoc committee. And I think that unless there's a lot of opposition among committee members, we should really consider giving our sort of pass on it so that it can return to the planning board and get through the process. And, again, what's out there is available to us. And so I think that the housing production plan is a very specified process and document that the state requires in order for us to show that we are making an attempt to create affordable housing in our community. And there are certain percentages that we are supposed to be reaching to be considered held harmless, so that a 40B that we're not particularly enamored of doesn't get smashed in our face. But it's really so that the town itself is much more proactive in designing and creating and promoting the type of housing that we think our community needs. So one of the things I would suggest we consider is whether we want to move this housing production plan back to the planning board so that it can keep moving and then end up at the town council. That might require the commitment of committee members to actually read the entire plan so that you feel comfortable making that decision. If you don't feel comfortable, then we can talk about that, and maybe that is something we have to debate. But again, I think you've already brought up that we're not here to solve all the problems, but to prioritize strategies that already have been discussed and have the town council put its weight behind those strategies. Because that is really my concern, is that it hasn't been elevated to the town council level to really provide the oomph to get a lot of these things taken care of.
Yeah.
And to address your concern about popularity of what we're proposing, I think that we should always be considerate of the public's views on housing. And I don't think any of the processes to date have not been inclusive of as many viewpoints as possible. But I also think our charge is to create and get the housing done so that people can live in our community. And we shouldn't, get too caught up in people-pleasing. I really think we need to take some responsibility for determining what is the best course of action for the town and supporting it and promoting it and saying this is what we need. So in many communities, there's a lot of ways that we resist housing, well-meaning, whether it's a density or, there's a certain irony in talking about Jake's project on West Main Street that, we might be happy with density there and its proximity to schools and, that's great, but we also need it to have a certain affordable component. We need the numbers to be able to work out so that, it's economically viable. I'm hearing that that's what Jake is saying. It's not economically viable with the current zoning and mix and some of the plans that he has. So anyway, I just wanted to have an opportunity to speak about where I think we should be moving as a committee. This is a short-term committee. It should not, God forbid, I hope we're not here in 8 months. I think we should be done before the end of this calendar year because our charge is to identify and prioritize certain strategies that already have been vetted. So, thank you.
I did call Felicia on the same subject, just to ask her what she thought, and she said 3 things, 8 months. So now, I don't know if I agree with you or disagree with you on everything, but if we come up with one thing, can we give it to the planning board? If we come up with a second thing, can we do it? How quickly can we actually do this? The second thing, and I agree with you that it's too long to wait 8 months. I agree with you. The issue of the public popularity is another issue because I don't want to come up with 3 things that when they get to the council, there's a scream from all over town and the council says no, and we've completely wasted our time. Because there's been so many years with so few things have gotten done that I don't want my year doing this to result in nothing being done. That's important, and even if it isn't the thing I'd most like to get done, if I could do it. So, and I don't know if that disagrees with you or not, because I think we need to pick things that we actually think can be done. One of the things I thought a lot about early on in this past month or so was one of the things we'd have to do is sell things to the public. Maybe our goal is to sell stuff to the public, to do a whole category of marketing to the public. And now I don't think so because it's not our job. We probably wouldn't be good
I don't
at it.
think that's the charge of this committee. I don't disagree that
agree
there's
with
certain
you.
things that
I'm not
have to
planning
be promoted and marketed and all that, but I think, this brain trust is here to really focus in on a couple of strategies that have already been created
I agree.
and push those forward. So that's what I think our charge is.
Who was first? I don't know. I wasn't looking that way.
I agree. We can't be here forever. But I think in fairness is outside of the one gentleman having COVID, this committee, because we don't want the public to believe that we have not been busy, this committee has been ready for every meeting, but because whoever, not the person that sets a schedule, but giving us a place to meet where the public can watch. So the committee is ready to be very active. It was the town not giving us a place to meet. So I kind of want to make that clear because it sounds like we're sitting on our hands. That, let me finish. That we are not doing. And I believe we have to be very involved because that's why we were formed to begin with. And I don't think anybody on this committee or even in the town is worried about a popularity contest because if you look at all the personalities, I think every last one of us could stand alone if we had to. So it's not about personalities. We all do want to hurry this along, but I think we need to understand this committee is not further along because we were not given a place to meet. Every meeting that we had, it had to be canceled because of the scheduling. So I just want to make that clear because we want the public to be involved in this as well.
I mean, as a counselor, you can meet every other Thursday night for as many hours as you want. mean, if I had my way, I'd meet every Saturday all day long and get it done by Thanksgiving. You know, that's what I'd like, but we can't do that. And so we're very limited time-wise, so how do we do that? And we can't meet the little groups, you know, off in a restaurant somewhere and talk about it, because that's illegal. So, how do you do it?
I think we need more time. 1 hour sitting here is just a teaspoonful of nothing. With time, not we're wasting time, but the amount of things that we need to go through and to really make concrete decision. 1 hour once a month is very shaky.
Thank you. I take issue with a few of the statements that have been made. I've paid a lot of attention to the process from the regional housing plan from the Cape Cod Commission to the housing plan of the town of Barnstable that's just been released, and the LCP committee. To be perfectly honest, there wasn't any public contribution of any measure to the Cape Cod Commission's plan. There was not. They haven't even published the comments of the public, if there were any. And that plan has been duplicated in most of those major aspects in both the LCP and our housing production plan without having any public really have a say in what's that's going on. I've gone to the LCP meetings that I've actually gone to villages, including my village, and they discourage public comment. Okay, so I would disagree with pushing these things forward until we actually have the public address those issues that they have concluded are best for our village and best for our town and villages, because they have not been vetted by the public at this point. So, you know, it's that's just my opinion. But that's what I've seen through actively watching this process. Okay, and a number of these provisions put in there do not have a lot of public support. I can tell you that. And it will go in front of the town council and it'll be torn apart until we decide to look at those and come up with a generally agreed upon way to go forward with the public's intentions brought forward to the forefront. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate Councilor Schnapp's comments. As to the housing production plan, I have read it, and it's certainly not ready for prime time. If you read it, you'll see there's a lot of questions within the plan as if they're waiting for something to happen. I don't know that this committee is holding up the process of that plan moving forward. It certainly is not ready to go to the planning board. I know it stopped and then it started again, and now it's out there. But again, I think we've all looked at it, and it is a whole bunch of ideas. And let's think back that we've never had one that's been certified. So why rush it forward and I don't think this one has a chance of being certified as well. And if the whole point of the plan is to get to 10% and to avoid 40Bs, maybe we don't do the plan. Maybe we want 40Bs because that would get us to where we want to be. We had Jake's fine comment and Eric Schwab about the inclusionary ordinance, and I agree. And I remember when we, as a town council, we approved the housing at the mall. Nothing's been done with that. I thought that was a brilliant idea. I've seen it done off Cape very well, very successfully. Nobody's bitten off on that. And I asked during that if we could have that more than, you know, the inclusionary zoning, and that was shot down. I think, you know, perhaps as a way to move forward would be for each of us on this committee to look at 3 ideas, bring those 3 ideas to the next meeting. Let's see where we have commonalities in our thought processes. Let's see where we have differences and talk about those. And I think 3 is a manageable number, and that might get something going. The housing production plan talks about the downtown zoning as a big step forward. Has that been a big step forward? Is that doing what we want? I don't know, but Paul, I agree that that plan is vitally important, but the way it stands right now, I'm in absolutely no rush to move it forward because it's not ready to move forward.
I do want to make something clear, though. We need to put some housing together and get something done here. It's just the fact that some of the proposals I've seen in these production plans are non-starters for a number of the communities here in Barnstable. But we need to actually get something accomplished, and I'm sitting here because I want to see some new ideas from Jake and this kind of thing, and other people that we can work on these properties that are, orphan properties, and put some housing on those properties that fit that we can work to do together. And so just because, I just wanted to say, because I have an issue with the housing plans that have been put forward without much public comment, doesn't mean any of us are trying to slow housing down. We like to see housing that fits into our communities.
Councilor Crowe, could I ask which strategies that are currently drawn out in the production plan you are opposed to or uncomfortable with?
Changing zoning in the villages, in the village centers, higher density, multifamily by right. Okay,
So you would agree that Hyannis should bear the brunt of most of our
I'm not saying
affordable
that at all.
housing?
I'm not saying that at
Because
all.
I'm not sure how we get to where we need to go if there isn't a shared responsibility in our town to create housing or to support housing that would provide a livelihood, that looks at the wide strata of folks that we hope are living in our community. Because right now, I don't know who can actually move here, unless you're already earning six figures twice. So I feel like we're really in a crisis, that we really have an issue. And what ends up happening is we have some of our housing stock being used by many unrelated, families and individuals, which creates an outcry in a lot of neighborhoods. It's like, wait a minute, how many people are living in that house? So if we aren't responsive to the demand and need for housing in our community, we're going to have a lot of other issues to be dealing with. So,
But you're intimating that I'm against expanding housing in our communities, and that's not the case. Okay, at least I'm not saying for me. I think the biggest thing we can do is to regulate short-term rentals, which has been by this council or the past councils have been. They don't want to regulate them, and that has taken the largest portion of year-round rentals out of the market. Okay, and if you look at the players here between the housing association, HAC, and a bunch of other things, they don't want to deal with that at all, and that's the biggest reason we're in such a crisis right now. Other than we have a shortage of housing, everybody does, throughout the country. We also live in one of the most expensive places in the United States. And so that makes it even more difficult for us to do that. Doesn't mean we're not going to do something about it, okay? But coming from the point or the stance that if you don't agree with some of the things that are in the housing production plan, then you don't agree with housing at all. I think there are better ways to do it, and I'd like to see that changed. Okay. And that would have been a much better document if the public had actually been involved.
The housing production plan there were many opportunities for the public to be involved. So I can't speak to the Cape Cod Commission's regional housing strategies. I know that there was a lot of input from various members of municipalities, and how, whether that extended to a larger public, I can't speak to that. But I know that our housing production plan had a lot of effort in outreach. Was it successful in having as diverse representation? Probably not, but we have found that to be difficult in all of our community processes, whether it's the LCPC, the housing production plan. I have to say our planning and development department has done extraordinary work to try to reach out to various communities, and it's not always easy because of all the many commitments, and the folks that have the most time available and sometimes the most passion, don't necessarily completely represent the rainbow of people who live in our community.
So
all right,
it's 6 o'clock, so we have to wrap things up. There is something I wanted to say that we can talk about the next meeting, but one of the issues or one of the questions that I have is, what is the target group of people that we want to most help? And the reason I say that is because I think it's fairly clear in the town's housing production plan, but it does not represent what's been done in the past in the town. It's been very different, and it doesn't represent some of the pressures that we're under from a certain part of the community to do something different. And so I'd like this, I hope we can do it without spending the whole hour, but to talk about what we believe our priority populations, plural, is to help with this, with whatever we accomplish. Because I don't know who it is, who this group feels it is. And I'm flexible, but, so we need to schedule another meeting. Can you help us with that?
Rick, what is the reason we can't meet for many hours on a Saturday?
You can meet on a Saturday, but I would have to post it to the public, and then we'd have to pay staff to be here on a Saturday, which is overtime because they don't work weekends. So it would be a matter of making sure that we have IT staff, which a lot of times we do not on the weekends because they have other commitments and other jobs.
When you talk about staff, are you talking about one person or several people?
It takes 3 people to run this meeting in IT.
Okay,
So we'd need a staff of 3.
so it's expensive.
Right, and the only reason why we're meeting in the hearing room is because that was the outcry from the public, was they wanted it in the hearing room where the sound was acoustically correct, because in the selectmen's conference room, you cannot always hear the members. And we got a lot of complaints from the public that they couldn't even hear, even when they tuned in to the selectmen's conference room.
It seems to be the feeling of this group that we want to accomplish something in a relatively short period of time. Is there any way that we can get more time together to do that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the hearing room is available on this, most of every Monday before 5 p.m. It's available. So if the committee wants to meet from 3 to 5, 3 to 5:30, you don't certainly have to meet right at 5 o'clock. That was a suggestion from the public, only because most people work and they can't get to a 3 o'clock meeting. So, by trying to accommodate different groups, that's why you're limited as to where you can meet, because you can meet in the hearing room because there's 9 of us and the public can hear you. But then the IT staff is not always available after 5 because they have other jobs and other commitments with other meetings. But then the outcry from the public was not to meet till after 5. So our hands are tied. But if this committee wants to meet every single Monday, this hearing room is available up until 5 p.m. So you can have a 2-hour meeting every single Monday from 3 to 5.
Response from people on the committee?
I would be okay with that. I think we need to be aggressive with this. And,
Even if the public can't
I agree.
join in, a lot of them, and they complain.
well, we are on Zoom, correct?
Can they go back and watch the meeting?
They can go back and watch it, yes, because it's being recorded and it's shown at different times throughout the programming of our IT department and Channel 18, so people can view it, yes.
I'm willing to do that, not on Labor Day, but I'm willing to do that otherwise. I won't be around on Labor Day, so.
Well, town's not open on Labor Day anyway, so we wouldn't have one.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm talking about the 9th, the 16th, the 23rd, and the 30th.
Just currently, the zoning subcommittee meets on Fridays at 3:30. So the zoning subcommittee
Yeah.
meets at Fridays and 3:30 every other Friday. So I don't see any difference between a Monday and a Friday.
So you're offering the possibility of us meeting on the 16th, the 23rd, and the 30th?
Starting the 9th.
What?
Starting on the 9th, the 16th, the 23rd, or the 30th, whatever 2 of those days are good for everybody, I would suggest every other Monday, if it works with people's
What's
schedule.
everybody think here? Let's have some opinions.
I'll be here on the 9th. I would not be here on the 23rd, at least in person. I could possibly be here
On the Zoom.
on Zoom. Now, I don't know if it's at 3 to 5, that might not be a conflict for Counselor Starr if he's involved with, I don't know what the Airport Commission strategic planning process is going to involve and what their time commitment is, but
So do we want to schedule one for the 9th from, 3 to 5 or whatever, and then we'll from there pick up,
gotta get talking the mic.
sorry.
So the public doesn't hear you if you're not
Yeah, sorry.
talking into the mic.
So if we meet on the 9th, we can on the 9th to talk about the next dates.
Yeah, the 9th is available. We can meet from 3 to 5.
Is that all right with everybody? Anybody object?
Yes.
Oh, you can't make the 9th?
But, go ahead and schedule it.
Maybe the 16th
I can
and
make
the
the
30th.
16th.
What?
Maybe the 16th and the 30th.
Well, I guess we could do the 16th and the 30th, too.
So this is.
I can't make the 16th,
What?
so,
You can't do the
No.
16th?
no. I don't think you're going to get all 9 of us every meeting, so you just,
I'm just trying to do my best, that's all.
yeah.
I know that. We don't have all 9 of us today, so. Okay. What?
What about the possibility of doing one like on the 9th and one on the 30th? If those days are more flexible for everybody.
9th and
The 30th is available all day, so whatever time you choose on the 30th is open, the hearing room. So if we do the 9th from 3 to 5, and then the 30th, whatever time you want to start that day, it's open all
So
day.
2 to 5 on the 30th?
3.
Well, she said anytime you want.
Monday.
You don't want to do it. Okay, 3 to 5 is okay. I'm not trying to cause,
I think a 2-hour meeting.
okay. Okay, so the 9th and the 30th are the next 2 meetings we're missing. And for those of you who haven't read all the stuff, please do read it all. And
Do you want to prioritize that everyone reads the full housing production plan by our next meeting?
I personally think that's more worthwhile than the commission's reading.
Yeah, I know, I think in terms of the regional housing strategy by the commission, just reading their page of strategies is
Yeah. I agree with you.
sufficient. But I
Yeah.
think our housing production plan does have a lot of,
The housing production
meat,
plan's
so-
130 pages, and there's been a ton of thought that's gone into that. My impression from reading it was that there's an awful lot to think about there. And that's a good thing. The fact that it's taken so long, well, who knows?
And Rick, could we get a presentation from Planning and Development on the seasonal communities and the housing bill? If there's pertinent information that could focus us on that, if they have that. I don't know if they do.
Well, I can invite somebody from Planning and Development. Who should I invite?
Jim?
Jim is right there.
Okay. Which one? You want to come on the 9th or the 30th?
That's a good question, thank you.
What's his name? You know his name? You know his name? You know?
Jim.
Jim, yeah, that's right.
There is something that I would like to ask, and it addresses
Wait a
something.
minute, let Jim answer that question
Oh, I'm
first.
sorry. I thought he was still.
The 9th would be great, if that's okay.
We're going to see you here on the 9th. So you'll send him a reminder to,
To Jake?
No.
no, Jim.
Jim, sure. Jim, I see you more than I see my own house, so.
Well, no, I'm just covering the bases, that's all.
Two very funny things, but they're serious. And I know, and I agree with you. There's a lot of community members who we wish would jump and get involved. But I believe there's some things that we really do take for granted. A lot of the people that we are struggling to help with housing don't have computers. They really don't. A lot of people may use their phones, but they can't see their emails. And that was the funny part I was going to say. I had surgery on one eye. One eye's good and one eye's bad. I can't touch my emails right now. And before we had computers, what we did was made flyers. And it sounds crazy, but it's real. If we could make a bunch of flyers, I'd take them out whenever there's a major event that is going to take place in the community. Because they really do not. They don't buy the paper. They don't, and that's not a negative to anybody. but their lives are busy. Does that mean they shouldn't have a right to housing because they're so busy that they don't buy a paper or they don't have a computer? But we want them to be involved. So if we can put it on the agenda, make a flower, okay, May 3rd of 2050, we're going to have a major housing vote. I would get those out. And the other thing is I do have to laugh. Now, this is funny, but no, I have not in the past 2 weeks read anything, and I probably won't read anything in the next week. I had eye surgery, and I am so excited because I have one good eye, but if I look at something to read, it's a bunch of ants. So I'm sorry, guys. But I am on cloud 9 with my vision, one eye vision anyway. But bear with me. I'll have it all
Move to
together.
adjourn?
I'm ready to adjourn.
Adjourn, or adjourn.
So moved.